No, I didn't start off today in the most productive way. I spent a little longer in bed in the morning than I wanted to. And to get out of this rut, my soul felt called to come here, to a place like this, which is pretty incredible because it makes you think about the validity and the merit that this has over our man-made technology. This is what gets me out of the rut versus zooming into a digital device. The technology of the woods versus the technology of the screen. And that's what I'm thinking about today. Technology and how we think about technology. When we think about technology, the word technology provokes ideas of man-made technology. Our phones, laptops, this microphone, the camera that's recording me right now. But we don't really think about the technology of the human body, the technology of the mind, the technology of the heart, spiritual technologies. Technologies that have taken many more decades and centuries to evolve and create than the ones that we hold around in our hands. And I think because we don't think of the technologies of the mind and the body and the spirit, when we think of the word technology, that results in where we invest our time and where we see power and where we see intelligence. And that's another funny word. Intelligence is a funny thing to quantify because our obsession with AI, artificial intelligence, has to do with the fact that AI seems to be much more advanced than humans at performing certain operations with data and information according to the intelligence that it has. But there's this missing component of humanity, human emotion, the technology of the mind, body, spirit. And so claiming that AI, that ChatGPT, that all these exterior technologies that we are pouring billions of dollars into evolving, claiming that that is the ultimate intelligence, has the ultimate power in current society, assumes that logic is more important than emotion. That logic doesn't need to have the human emotion, the human intuition, the technology of the mind, body, and spirit in order to be on this pedestal that sort of dictates the way we analyze and think about the world. But I want you to imagine, almost just play out this thought. What if I had access to an inner intelligence, an inner power that far surpasses any human man-made technology that's out there in the world right now? Even if you don't believe that, even if you don't think that, just imagine. Imagine if you did. What would you do? How would your behaviors change? How would that change the way you approach life, or the way that you think, or where you invest your time? How would that change your relationship to technology? I think one of the great dystopian phenomena of our time is that we spend more time with man-made technology than we do with ourselves. We invest more time, literally more time in the day, more hours, into our screens and devices than into our relationship with ourselves. And a relationship with ourselves is not just solitude or meditation or coming outside here. Those are all great things, and I love those things. But I know that those can be a little boring when you think about it, because we're so used to one way of life. We're so used to the current physical things that we spend our time around. But a relationship with yourself isn't just those things. It can be reading a book, spending time with others, with loved ones, practicing a sport, going someplace that you love. Stepping away from the technology, stepping away from the things that you just impulsively do because it's just the immediate thing that's around you. Isn't that a weird thing? It seems that the more we advance and rely on this exterior technology, the more we lose this skill to explore the inner world and to see what we think and what we feel. That's the human component, that's the spiritual component, that's the emotional component. And the interesting thing about our collective effort to evolve this artificial intelligence and the technology of the electrical devices that we've invented is that we're all pouring all of these hours into something that we didn't all necessarily subscribe to. And it's this collective intelligence that we're worshiping. It's almost like I get this visual of like a bunch of people, millions of people holding up this big thing, and they're just focusing on holding it up, and they're looking down at the ground because they're just focused on where their hands are. But everyone's lined up next to each other, and no one's looking at one another and be like, wait, why are we holding this thing? Do we have to hold this thing? I think it'd be very dangerous for a society, for a world, to orient all of its systems and all of its analyses of information in the world around this intelligence that, once again, doesn't factor emotion, it doesn't factor intuition, and certainly doesn't factor any thoughts or emotion that are directly felt through the human experience. That'd be a very dangerous thing for society to do that. That's what's happening right now. But I think when it comes to our part in this world and in this greater game that we're playing is looking at the way you individually spend your time and where you invest your time and where the power dynamic is between you and the technology. One of the dynamics at play when we spend a lot of time with technology and devices impulsively is that it builds and cements this thought in your head that this thing has the power and this thing has the answers. Your body is subconsciously programming itself to constantly go to it for anything, as opposed to turn inward. That's at least what I see happens with myself. There's this chasing feeling that I have to get something, or I have to go here to get what I want, or get what I think I need, when really everything is already here. Do you know your phone better than you know yourself? I think that's the question that we can be asking ourselves more of, including myself. I don't stand before you today as some kind of person who has got this all perfectly cemented down. I talk about this because it's something I notice with myself and with the rest of the world. But I know we all have a part to play, and I know that we all have a responsibility to seize the responsibility that we have. We have a responsibility to use our time and our power for good. And because technology is such a dominant part in all of our lives, such a dominant part, that's going to be involved with the idea and with the topic of what we ought to do with our lives and what we ought to do on this planet. Food for thought. Your relationship with yourself is whatever you intuitively feel that means. And so I call you to invest more time into that rather than into your devices. Thank you for listening, and I will see you guys in the next one. As always, God bless, dream on, and peace out.